Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Before I speak in opposition of House Bill 258, I want you all to know a few things about me to put this opposition in proper perspective. Number one, I have members of law enforcement in my family as well as friends, and I do care deeply about their safety. The second part is not personal, but because we're having so many alternative facts passed around, I think that people need to hear real facts about what is currently going on. Although one loss of life from an officer is too much because they do risk their lives every day to keep all of us safe, statistics show that being a police officer has actually gotten safer over the past 4 decades. During the 1970s, an average of 127 police officers were fatally shot each year, according to the Memorial Fund. Since then, the death toll has continued to decline, falling by more than half to about 53 officers fatally shot each year during the past decade. These are the facts, not emotion. The second thing I want you to know, which is personal, is that I do not speak in opposition to this bill without some relevant frame of personal reference of having had the experience of working in an inherently dangerous job where I risk my life every day that I went to work. Before entering the business world, my first job after graduating from the University of Florida was in an all-male maximum security facility for the criminally insane. To be sentenced to this facility, you had to be a man who had committed at least a felony and were either mentally incompetent to stand trial, or you had been found not guilty only by reason of insanity. This facility allowed the men to roam freely within the facility, and for the majority of my shift, my job was to interact with these men who were not made to stay behind bars. I was in close proximity, usually interacting with them about as close to them as I am to you. During training, the facility told us cautionary tales of employees who had lost their lives or were badly injured while doing the job. So it was paramount that we all understood that every time you step foot in this facility, you are risking your life, as residents are not contained. Now, me telling you this is not to directly compare apples to apples of my first job with the job that police officers do every day, but there are some similarities. Although residents did not have access to guns, the population I worked with was guaranteed to be more dangerous than most of the people walking around on the streets. And they had nothing but time to create makeshift weapons or devise plans to hurt us. I regularly witnessed residents doing everything they could to provoke the staff, from hurling bodily fluids at us to physical attacks in an effort to get a staff member fired, or to get a staff member to fight them or hit them because that would result in the staff member being fired. We were trained to follow protocol, which was based on de-escalation, and we were also reminded that this was a job that we had applied to do. And if you could not control your temper or your actions, then please find employment elsewhere, because retaliatory violence against those incarcerated was both completely unacceptable and was a fireable offense. After all, we were the trained professionals. Cameras were everywhere, and accountability was not a problem, which brings me to my next point. Now I'm going to address the elephant in the room on this issue, as this bill will primarily affect people who look like me, that is, people of color. And so I must rise to speak in opposition to HB 258 for several reasons. The first is the increased mandatory minimums of jail time offered in this bill are unacceptable, especially at this time when both Democrats and Republicans have agreed that mass incarceration overall hinders citizen productivity and is too expensive for states to maintain. But the central objection I have with this bill in particular is that there is a long-standing problem of police accountability and police relations with communities of color in this country. And without real accountability measures in place for law enforcement, which we currently do not have, we should not be additionally criminalizing people on the word of law enforcement as to what happened in a specific police encounter. Most recently, we have had video proof that not all officers are exactly truthful about incidents, although the majority are. In 2016, Terrence M. Cunningham, head of the International Association of the Chiefs of Police Association, offered a formal apology to the country's minority population. This is what the International Association of the Chiefs of Police had to say. He said, and I quote, "For the actions of the past, we apologize for the actions of the past and the role that our profession has played in society's historical mistreatment of communities of color." Cunningham defended policing as a noble profession, but noted that events over the past several years have caused many to question the actions of our officers. He also added, "At the same time, it is also clear that the history of policing has also had darker periods." He cited laws enacted by state and federal governments which have required police officers to perform many unpalatable tasks. While this is no longer the case, this dark side of our shared history has created a multi-generational mistrust between many communities of color and their law enforcement agencies. Cunningham's comments are an acknowledgement of police departments' past role in exacerbating tensions and an important first step to move forward and improve community relations nationwide. Two top civil rights groups on Monday commended Cunningham for taking an important first step in acknowledging the problem. And I also thank him as well for having the courage to acknowledge that this is acknowledge this as both a police officer and also as someone who is not a person of color. But sadly, we still have too much proof that this is still an issue today. Bills like HB 258 add nothing constructive to these problems. They don't send a message. They mostly just have the effect of further dividing communities of color and law enforcement. Right now, we need good policies around these issues, not ones that exacerbate the problem. And I can tell you that while HB 258 may feel good politically to some, it simply will not be helpful. We have taken some good steps in this session to assist police officers, and I voted for those measures, and I support those measures. Some of those measures were putting in raises in the budget for officers. Although I've talked to many officers who've said that health insurance is a top reason that they leave the force, and that's also an area of concern. But we have made some steps to support police officers. Better pay leads to a better candidate pool to fill police officer positions and better retention. But nothing can be more beneficial to officers than a good working relationship between them and the community, because this leads to increased safety for both the citizens they serve as well as the officers. Now, I just got elected, and so I'm fresh off of personally canvassing thousands of people. I suspect that many of you have been in here for quite some time and cannot say the same. But here's what the general public is saying. While going door to door, I met more than a few 80-year-old tax-paying African-American grandmothers who told me that sometimes they witness low-level crime in their neighborhood but end up not reporting it because they don't want to take the chance that inviting police into their community may result in an incident of police brutality or police harassment of their relatives and friends who may be out and about in the local community. This sentiment wasn't just limited to people of color. I also had residents in predominantly white parts of my district who echo the same concerns about police and neighbors of color potentially having issues. So this is also a matter of national security. This problem affects everyone. One of the most commonly used tactics to fight terrorism in this country, which is suggested for the public by law enforcement, is the policy of, if you see something, say something. Let me ask you this. How inclined do you think people are to report suspicious activity if they are largely uncomfortable with law enforcement? This affects our national security. I will close with this. Systems work best when accountability is present, and our criminal justice system is no different. There are many examples of neither police policies or the Constitution being followed during police encounters. The result is that individuals' constitutional rights are injured, and when this happens time and time again within the same communities, a mistrust of law enforcement begins to build, and communities of color have felt this for decades. Having both members of law enforcement as well as victims of unfair police targeting in my family has allowed me to understand and see both sides of the issue. If you really want to back the badge, then vote no on HB 258 and propose policies that actually work to fix accountability issues and fund resources that contribute to good policing, because that is what we all want. good policing. And I submit that after the passage of HB 280 earlier today, we are actually passing laws that make police less safe, not more safe. I will support policies that make both the community and police officers safer, but HB 258 is not one of them. I will also add that the Black Caucus has also taken a caucus position against this bill. Mr. Speaker, I will yield for questions if there are any.
There are none.
Okay. I yield the wheel. Thank you.